What is going on, everyone? This is Dr. Josh Funk, and you are listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast.
Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Zach Baker of Rehab to Perform and R2P Academy. And on today's episode, I've actually got a former student of ours, and we have a lot of students come through R2P. But this is one, Mark Marinch, who actually spent his time at our Frederick location. I want to say with Kelly Yates as his CI. So I got to spend a couple months with him when he was up here and have been following along since he has been graduated and out in the working world. But Mark, thanks for taking the time to come on.
Zach, thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome. Well, Mark, for those listening, do you mind just giving kind of a quick little rundown of who you are, how you got into PT school, and now that you're out of school, what are you up to?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Mark Marinch. I'm from Las Vegas. My PT journey probably started like most. I was an injured athlete, and I had a lot of great athletic trainers. I had a lot of good rehab specialists who kind of inspired me to also get into the field. I was always interested in science. So once I found out that I could pair science with sports, it was kind of a no-brainer. After college, I started coaching baseball. So I played baseball in college. Then I started coaching baseball, did that for a few years. And I was doing my best to keep the kids healthy. And I was trying to manage their throwing volume, trying to coach their pitching mechanics, doing everything I could. And there was still just something missing. Like there was something that I didn't know. And then COVID happened. And I was a little burnt out on coaching and some other stuff that was going on in my life in terms of work. And it was like, all right, I got to figure out something that can pair my interests of science, pair my interests of helping these baseball players, and actually be a career. And physical therapy was a no-brainer from there. So now I'm a physical therapist in Las Vegas. I work at Elevate Sports Performance, and we have a great setup. It's cash-based PT, but we also have chiropractors, massage therapists, nutritionists, and training all in-house. So it's kind of a place where we can pair all aspects of healthcare together and give what's best for the people.
That's awesome. I knew that you were out in Vegas. I didn't know that it was an interdisciplinary clinic like that with chiros and massage and all of that accessible. So that's pretty cool. Since you've been there and really out of PT school, what's been the biggest adjustment for you in the working world? I know, it's funny. We'll have people that'll work at R2P after being a student at R2P for 2 months, 3 months, some for even more extended periods of that. And there's still a learning curve to when you are on your own and you're an autonomous clinician. What would you say personally have been some of the biggest learning curves or adjustments that you've had?
Yeah, there's a massive learning curve. It's a steep one too. I think the biggest one for me has been that being that it's a cash-based setting, there's, two things related to that. The first one is that you have to be good at a little bit of everything. You have to be good at sales. You have to be good at marketing. You have to understand a little bit of like offer creation and some product development. And then you have to also be good at getting people better. So, in a insurance setting where you have a lot of people coming in and they're happy to use their insurance and they want to come in and, they're going to see you because they have to go to PT. It's easy to get your schedule filled up. And in this setting, you have to do all of that stuff to get your schedule filled up. And then the second piece is like actually getting them better. And it's like I have to sell my like treatment skills to them every single session. And that has been the hardest thing because there's things that I think that the person needs. And it's like, yeah, you need this, and that. And then there's what the person thinks they need. And then there's actually getting them to, do those things and make the changes. So that's been the hardest thing, is just being able to sell to the patient what they need.
There's a lot to unpack there. And it's always the conversation of, I think honestly, especially when people come out of PT school and they gravitate towards some of the cash pay clinics. And honestly, I think part of it comes down to when you look at facilities and resources and the setups, there is usually a distinct difference between a more niche boutique or, just specific population that a cash-based PT caters to compared to your more traditional outpatient clinics. And it's funny when you mention all the things that you did, and it was something where I've only ever worked in the insurance-based PT world. Now, I've done personal training, I've done small group training, I've done things for other companies from a strength conditioning standpoint. I had my own LLC for a little bit early on in my career, running a strength conditioning business. So that side from a sales, a customer interaction I've been a part of. But you had mentioned filling your own schedule and people not just being spoon-fed to you. And that was actually a reality that hit me when I transitioned from my first place of employment that I spent 2.5 years at after graduating from PT school, and then went over to R2P. Was the first place I worked at, they were primarily driven through physician referrals. And a lot of them were post-operative patients who it was just a foregone conclusion, hey, you need PT. Like, you're going to PT for X amount of days, so many weeks. Or it was another population that, unfortunately, PT was like part of a journey of getting another piece of imaging or going to pursue surgery. And it was more of a formality than anything, but they had to be there. So they were kind of stuck with me, for better or worse. And then Maryland's a direct access state. And at R2P, we have a lot of people that voluntarily seek out PT, which is awesome. But they're also the same people that are going to voluntarily discharge themselves from PT if you can't give them a reason to continue to come back. And what it really forces you to do is take all of your knowledge from PT school and figure out, how do I articulate this, communicate this, and present it to a patient where I'm clearly giving them what their problem is, but also confirming for them that I have the solution. And that is that's a skill. And it's a skill that, unfortunately, until you put your foot in your mouth too many times, or you fail to communicate that, and you have the conversation, with your managers, with the owners, where they can just share some experiences that they've had as well and help you navigate that. It's one that you can't truly appreciate until you're in that moment.
Yeah, no, it's you're totally right. And I'll just touch on two things there. The filling your own schedule is absolutely the toughest thing. And I'm very lucky and fortunate where I'm at Elevate, where a lot of my patients are already members within our training community. So they just pop on over and they know me from there. So that has made it easier. But if I was in a place where you had to 100% fill your own schedule to make your money, that would make it a lot tougher. And then in terms of actually getting the patient to buy in and want to come back, the biggest realization for me has been, the best treatment is not often the best product. So I can look at a patient and I could see all these things that I think I want to improve. And I can think of this plan that I think is the most perfect plan that will get them from where they are to the 100% optimal goal for them. And that is not the best product for them. The best product for them might be something that is a little bit simpler, might be something that only gets 80% of the results, might be something that I might actually think is not the best way to do an exercise, but it's something that they'll understand because they know some fitness jargon. So that has been a really, really tough thing, because I feel like I'm learning so many different things in terms of treatment and all these different ways to do things, and for programming, and all these different things that I'm learning, but then actually packaging that and getting it to a patient in something that will get them results, something that's simple to digest and understand, and something that is actually just easy for them to fit into their life that's been the biggest challenge.
That is something. So speaking on my side as a clinical instructor and as a mentor at our company, I used to feel guilty when I would have students and they'd be on like their fourth or fifth patient of the day with me, and maybe they see like a similar exercise theme going along, or they see something that for an outside observer who doesn't know context, it's a very underwhelming program. And I used to spend so much time justifying to the student all of the backstory of how we got there. And I've gotten more comfortable with just letting them figure that out on their own and listening to the patient, seeing sessions unfold, and having them start to come to the realization of, hey, here's the textbook optimal way to treat this if we're operating in a vacuum with no extenuating circumstances. And then here's the reality of, all right, this person, they don't show up all the time. When they do show up, they might be 5 minutes late. I give them stuff to do at home, but then they tell me they don't have the equipment or they don't have the time. Maybe they're a single parent. Maybe they have 5 kids. Maybe they're working 2 jobs. Maybe there's financial constraints. Maybe this is the 5th time they've dealt with this injury, and they haven't had good success with previous PT, and they're not really sold on this. And if I confuse them off the bat with a 12th grade level exercise and they're functioning at like a 2nd grade level, then we're going to lose them. So we just need to keep them coming back and get consistency. And then once we develop consistency, then we can start adding layers on that. And that was something I struggled with a lot. And I probably still struggle with it, but I'm getting more comfortable with allowing students and new grads to come to that realization. And it's funny because I remember being a student and I'd be in clinics. I'm like, oh, this PT's lazy. They're not putting in the effort, or, oh, they're really phoning this one in. They're just doing the same thing. And then I started treating on my own. I'm like, oh, this is what they were going through. And this is how you handle that. And I think, it's no different than anything. It's like you think about like diet and nutrition. And if somebody has never even evaluated their own diet, you don't need to hit an A+ with them. You just need to take their F to a C. And then once they consistently operate a C, then we make it a B, then we make it an A-, and then we make it an A. But if we try to go from an F to an A and we make all these radical changes to their diet, it's not going to last more than 3 days before they just pack it in. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's always something that is top of mind for me as a clinician, even being 11 years out. Now, Mark, you've had some awesome experiences so far early in your career. You have a background with a baseball background. You have strength conditioning exposure. You have coaching exposure. You're in a really cool setting now. What is a way that you see your career progressing? And I look at this in a variety of ways, like within your own current setup. What are things that you just envision yourself becoming more comfortable or efficient with, or maybe roles and responsibilities that you would love to see yourself grow into, or just what are other kind of personal, professional aspirations that you have?
Yeah, I think the progression for me has always been one towards the business side of things. I did a cash-based PT course before I was in PT school, and I think PT school was the stepping stone, and it was the degree that I needed to kind of meld the business that I wanted to do. And yeah, now knowing what I know now, it's like I don't know if all the student loan debt was necessary for the business, but it's always much clearer in hindsight. But I don't know exactly what that business looks like. If it's moving up in Elevate, if it's doing something on my own eventually. Right now, I'm in my skill development phase. So I'm just trying to acquire as many skills as possible. And those are on all forms of business, from the treatment lens, manual therapy, exercise selection, programming, all of that stuff, and the physical therapy aspect, but then also figuring out, like we just said, how to not just give that to a patient, but how do I package that and then teach someone else who's like me? It's like, how do I simplify things and cut down those steps for them too? and then also all the business stuff, because the business stuff has been the thing that's been really, really hard for me. And it's something that I think is 100% necessary, but you're not necessarily taught that in school. And if you don't know anything about sales or like how to have a sales conversation, or you have like this negative connotation with sales, then it's going to be a lot harder for you. And same thing with marketing, same thing with content. I think all of those skills are necessary and important to understand, even at a baseline level. So then you can understand your role within a business. And so yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm kind of trying to develop all those skills, and I don't have every time I try to have like a very clear plan of like, this is where I'm going to go. It never works out that way. So I try to have like a general idea of where I want to go. And then I'm all about just getting a little bit better at each of those things every day.
No, and I think I think some of the most productive career advancements, however you want to look at that, are the ones that happen relatively organically. And they happen organically because you're taking preparatory steps to always be ready for whenever that next opportunity presents itself. And I think early on in your career, all the stuff that you just mentioned are necessary things to work on. And I think they are foundational to really any avenue that you pursue. With getting more into the business aspect of things, part of having a good business is creating an awareness and a brand and certain systems and processes. Knowing you as a student and just following along, I know you've always been kind of in tune with what's been going on with social media and having a presence there. Do you mind talking a little bit just about what you have going on there, steps that you have done that you have found successful, either from just a content creation standpoint and having a consistent presence on there, and then also just, what have you found that's been enjoyable about it? Because I know that's something for a lot of people, the thought of it is just extremely overwhelming from a systems and processes, and then they just don't enjoy it. So how do you keep it enjoyable, and how have you found success with having the consistency that you have?
Yeah, I'll touch on the enjoyable aspect of it. First is I have a lot of baseball players who reach out to me, like more than I could ever possibly fathom, from all over the world. Like I've been on calls with people in Germany. I've been on calls with people from Cuba. I have coaches from Japan, and I have so many baseball players who are in pain and are looking for solutions. And that is what excites me, is that I have things that I think can help, and there is an outlet that I can help them with, and it doesn't cost them anything. So that's been the part that is most rewarding. It's that when I'm in Las Vegas, there's only so many people I can reach, and the way to reach them takes so much more time versus what you can do on social media. But the steps to get here have not been easy. And the first step is absolutely the hardest for anyone who wants to get into it. It's actually just making the jump and doing it, and getting over the fears of what other people might think or what they might say. That was the thing that really held me back in the beginning. And, I was fortunate I lived at the R2P house with Ben, and Ben is just a monster on social media. And I remember just watching him take his camera and his tripod and setting it up in the gym and not caring about anything. And I was like, I can do that too. And then the steps that have gotten me better at it are just committing to being consistent and making myself say, I'm going to post once a day, every day. Or, there was a point on TikTok, I was posting 3 times a day. And the growth for me didn't come from me making those posts. It wasn't like I made 100 posts in a row and then I just got better. The growth for me came from the learning in between each post, where it was like, okay, this posted really well, and I posted it this time, and I used these hashtags, and I responded to these comments. And this post, I thought I edited really well, but it didn't do as good. So it was the analysis between each post that has made the process get much easier for me. And, or it might be, it's like, I really wanted to make this many posts and I didn't save the amount of time during the day that I needed. So now it becomes more of like an actual production process where it's like, if I just batch 5 videos together and then I edit them, it's going to make it a lot easier for me during the day. So to me, that's the biggest thing. It's like, if you want to do it, getting over the first step and actually doing it and not worrying about what people think is step number one. And then just commit to 100 days of it. If you commit to 100 days, you're bound to learn so much in between those days. And that would be the advice I would give myself if I was starting over in social media.
No, that's awesome. And I think we always talk about like the PDCA loop: plan, do, check, adjust, when we talk about patient care in our Blueprints course. And it's a living document. You create a plan, then your big step, you have to actually do it. You check and see what types of results, what types of outcomes you got, how was it received, and then from there, you figure out what worked and what didn't work, and you make your modifications and you adjust. You create your new plan, you check, adjust. So it's funny, a lot of the stuff that you had just mentioned, it's no different how you attack your social media strategy is often what I'm doing on these days, Tuesdays and Thursdays in our Mount Airy office, running reports on our clinicians and looking at, all right, who are our busier clinicians? Who are our clinicians that are getting better outcomes with their patients? Who are our clinicians that are constantly having people call the office and request to work with them? What are the metrics on the backside that correlate to this? And it's fun. And there's never a direct cause and effect. And I'm sure social media is the worst, where you think you have the algorithm figured out and you start adjusting to it and then it changes completely. And what used to work doesn't work. And some stuff works and you have no clue why it worked. But you can often find correlations. And you can find that when you consistently do things in a certain manner, you get certain outcomes. And when you fail to do certain aspects in a certain manner, you're not going to get outcomes. And I think it was refreshing to hear you just talk about that, because I'm sitting back here thinking, when I get off this call, I'm going to be running numbers for our clinicians. And those are the exact same things that I'm looking at to figure out, why are certain locations thriving in certain areas? And what are our newer locations that are still building momentum? How can we start to utilize those systems and processes there so that we've got uniformity across the company? Mark, last question that I have for you, and honestly, I could sit on here for another hour, but we'll keep it to one more question. For those who are pursuing PT school, or for those who are in PT school getting ready to graduate, what would be some advice that you would give them just based off your own experiences?
Yeah, the biggest advice would be to, two things. One would be to advocate for yourself in PT school. And if you have a clear idea of what you want to do and where you want to go, then you can articulate that to your professors, and then you can end up at a place like an R2P. Or my other rotation was at Cressy Sports Performance, and these are places that I wanted to go. And I was able to get there because I had made the connections with not only the people who were there, but I also, relayed those connections to my professors. So definitely advocate for yourself. And in the meantime, while you're learning and you're gaining skills, execution is a much better way of learning than consuming. And that is something that is taking me a very, very long time to get to, because I love to consume and I love new courses and I love learning information. But the best way to do that is by actually doing the things. So if it's a choice between, taking a course on programming and coaching versus getting a part-time job as a coach where you get to coach and program, I would 100% suggest to take the coach versus take the job as a coach. And I think that applies to anything in business or in PT, whatever it is. If you want to get better at business, don't do the course on business, just create the ad and try to run the ad and learn from there. So that's where I'm at right now. And that would be the biggest thing that I would suggest to a student.
Oh, that's awesome. And Mark, for those who are listening along that want to follow you along your journey throughout the PT field, because I'm very excited to see where your path takes you, what's the best way for them to do that? And what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
The best way is just on any social media. It's just my first and last name, Mark Marinch, at Mark Marinch. And the best way to reach out, I would say, would be also just through message on there. I'm pretty frequently checking all of those messages and trying to respond to people as quickly as I can. So that would be the best place.
Awesome. Well, Mark, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on here today, and best wishes with everything moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or have been tuned in for multiple episodes, we would love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Until next time, thanks for listening.